Welcome to Engage. I'm your host, Todd Hansen. Thank you for joining me as we tell the story of engaged learning at Utah Valley University. On this program, we showcase examples of students who are learning by doing. Today, we're spending some time with the Peace and Justice Studies program at UVU. Recently, some of the students traveled for the opportunity to study the centuries-old conflict in Northern Ireland. That's coming up on Engage. The students from UVU's Peace and Justice Studies program traveled to Northern Ireland to gain first-hand experience into the structures of peace building and conflict transformation that have recently rescued Northern Ireland from violence.
Some of the things that I've done to prepare myself for this trip was looking at the history of the situation and trying to incorporate that and take that into account for why there has been conflict, because I think that's an integral part of peace building.
To be right there on the street, seeing the faces of people that you know were involved in this trouble, that witnessed this violence, is a really powerful thing.
Tina Philpott.
To have those types of experiences with the people that are working in the communities, working in mediation capacities, working in the various groups that are developing and rebuilding neighborhoods and communities in ways that not experienced anywhere else. Our students will be understanding these conflicts in ways that they will be able to bring back into their own communities and into their own society.
The best thing about this trip has been the sense of reality that I've gained from it, that I couldn't have gotten from the books.
This has been a life-altering experience for me in so many ways and in so many levels, but I have been most impacted by the individuals that we have met, and particularly the victims of the conflict, those who have shared their pain, their anguish, that they will carry through that with them through all of mortality, and yet how they have also worked through that process to create a passion for peace, for forgiveness, for justice, and for reconciliation, not just in their own lives, but for their families and the community. They have taught me a great deal.
I'm here with Drs. Michael Minch and Jeff Torlina. Thanks, gentlemen, for being here. We were talking earlier, and I said, boy, I want to go to Northern Ireland. You said you should.
Yeah.
Why did you want to have this opportunity for students?
Well, our peace and conflict studies, part of our program is important to us, and Northern Ireland is the world's premier laboratory for peace building and reconciliation. They've had conflict there for centuries, for generations. And some of the best and most important scholars working on conflict transformation, peace building, reconciliation are there. Their programs are there. People come from all over the world to study Northern Ireland, to meet people there who have been involved both in the violence and in the peace building. So to immerse our students in that environment, both in real life opportunities with people, with actors, also with scholars, that's why people go there from all over the world.
And Jeff, was it everything you thought it would be? Because I'm sure you maybe had some questions going in.
Well, honestly, when you're away from your own society, studying conflict in other places, it's amazing how much you're made aware of those ways in your own society that are also affected by similar issues and similar themes. So there's those kinds of things that are surprising, actually, constantly seeing that.
And what is the mission of the department as a whole? I mean, what are these students trying to accomplish with this education?
Well, our students who are studying peace and justice studies will, for most of them, they're planning on entering humanitarian organizations, working for non-governmental organizations. Some of them hope to work for the State Department or be a diplomat. But they all, in one way or another, want to make their careers in peace building. And that can take a myriad of forms. They could be hydrologists who dig wells in Africa, or people who work with persons who have been traumatized by conflict therapeutically, or as scholars. There's just a limitless number of ways that our students are going to enter careers, are entering careers, and devote themselves to making the world a better place.
Is there anything that was particularly surprising when you went there, what you learned?
Well, that's interesting. I'll be interested to know what Jeff says in response to that question. But for me, it was the constant ways in which Northern Ireland is both a society still in conflict, and yet at the same time so radically less conflictual. They've done so much to pull themselves out of conflict and create institutions that are democratic and just and peaceable, that in some ways you forget there's violence there still, yet when you look closely at certain institutions or certain rhetoric, it's still present, and it's really wondrous and interesting how it's a society so quickly in transformation, yet there's a lot still there that needs to be transformed. And that was really, you can't learn that in a classroom. That's why you have to be there.
Thoughts, Jeff?
Well, similarly, the people are so friendly, gracious, warm, and welcoming. To see that as a war zone is hard to imagine at times. But then there are other times when it does seem like the violence and the conflict is intractable. So those juxtapositions are very interesting to see.
What's the feedback that you've gotten from students?
Our students have used words like transformative. This has changed my life. I'll never be the same. And now I know what I want to do with my life. So we have, for example, one of the students who went on our first trip there is now studying there in one of the graduate programs where we studied. And we have 2 other students applying to 2 of those graduate programs. People come from all over the world again to do graduate work there, and we'll probably have 3 of our students in one of those or others of those graduate programs, next year. Yeah. So our students were deeply impacted, moved, and also many of them had a kind of a career choice made for them.
Yeah, an amazing once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When we come back, we will have 2 of the students that were there for this incredible experience. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Utah Valley University, home to an educational philosophy that engages its students in hands-on, practical education. I invite you to learn more about one of Utah's largest, fastest growing, and most dynamic universities.
I'm Joe Luce, an anthropology student at UVU, and this is my classroom. At UVU, I'm sharpening my mind and my skills.
Welcome back to Engage. We're here with the Peace and Justice Studies program. Welcome back, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. We're here with Ange and Ben, a couple of students in the program. I'm curious, just right off the bat, what was the experience in Northern Ireland like for both of you?
Oh, I get to answer.
All right.
For me, it was the opportunity to learn about peace building and conflict resolution hands-on. So, and to be in a society that's coming out of conflict.
And Ben?
Yeah, I'll echo what Ann just said. What was truly exciting and enriching about the program was you're there amongst people who are really working on building peace for themselves, having gone through a horror that you can read about, but it's difficult to imagine, right, unless you've actually experienced it. And so seeing that work being done on the ground and seeing both the frustration but also the hopefulness of the people engaged in that work, I think was remarkable and a remarkable learning experience. So.
Now I asked these two this, but was there anything, Ange, that surprised you about the experience?
I guess knowing that it's post-conflict, you think that there's not going to be the tension, the still remnants of the conflict there, and you can feel it, it's palpable, so really? It was surprising. Well,
and it's gone on for centuries, so it's going to be there, right, but maybe in the background now. Mm-hmm. And for you, was there a surprise?
Well, again, I mean, that I think for most of us on the trip, that notion of, even if you're familiar with the terminology of something like post-conflict, which implies that there's still tension there in the given society, you get on the ground and you see, in fact, that it's not, peaceful in the sense of everyone's happy getting along. No, there's a lot of work and there's a lot of still deep-seated resentments, because as you say, I mean, the history of these things for them go back and back and back, and they can recount that history to you. Everyone can recount that history to you, and it's very present to them. And so sensing that just because a peace agreement has been signed, that doesn't mean actually that peace exists. No, the peace is a constant work. And I think that was something that even if I knew it intellectually from the literature, seeing it is really kind of reinforces that in a way that I think to a level that I wasn't entirely prepared for.
And that's exactly what you were hoping for.
Yeah. It's called peace building for a reason, and it's there aren't British paratroopers on the ground anymore or running gun battles in the streets. But Ange and Ben are exactly right. There's a lot of peace that is being built and still needing to be built, which is why we take students there, and it's the laboratory that it is.
A laboratory, and more than just a great vacation, which I'm sure there were some elements of that. But tell me, Ange, what were you actually doing when you were there?
Well, we were involved in two summer programs, one at INCOR, which is at the University of Ulster, and the other at the Irish School of Ecumenics. And with both of those programs, we broke apart the peace process that they used in Northern Ireland so that we could understand the building blocks. So we were able to come out of it with this model that hopefully we can apply to other conflicts around the world. So it made it so peace is possible, made us realize that we can actually be a part of the process and make change.
I've seen some video of what you were doing while you were there that was shot. It seemed like just talking with a lot of people and being in seminars and those sort of things. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were both in academic settings. Ange mentioned the Institute for Conflict Research at the University of Ulster and the Irish School of Ecumenics. But we also met with a lot of key players, people who have been involved in paramilitaries, people who work on the ground in numerous peace-building activities. So it was both academic in a very direct sense, and then also out in the field meeting with people around in the cities in the country.
10, 15 years ago, this just wouldn't have been possible. Did you ever think, Jeff, that you'd have an opportunity like this?
No, absolutely not. It's extraordinary. And the benefits are incredible, and we meet the top scholars from around the world, the leading activists and people that have just done remarkable things. So it is really remarkable.
Yeah, for example, meeting with the Nobel Prize, the Peace Prize winning folks, as a matter of fact.
Well, certainly getting to meet with someone like John Hume, who I said to myself when I was there, I won't get to meet Gandhi and I won't get to meet MLK, but I'm you know, speaking with a person who frankly is on that level. He's a remarkably courageous human being, and so meeting people like that is such a truly unique experience. And then all the people who you know have not gained that kind of acclaim and have not, you know, been in the position to do the amazing things that he did, and yet are still every day when they get up working, building peace and maintaining peace and trying to keep the things that have been gained solid. That's, you know, it's remarkable. And to just be able to talk to them and see the dedication and the hope that they have, but a realistic hope, not a foolish hope, but a hope born of knowing that it's hard work but doable. That's it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, we said before, a once-in-a-lifetime experience to do this. Do you look at it, Ange, as that way, or do you look at it as one of hopefully many once-in-a-lifetime experiences?
Hopefully it's the beginning of, you know, one of many, but from where I'm sitting, it was a great experience. It changed a lot for me. It has changed what I want to do for the future, grad school, and my life, so it was a big deal.
What type of students would fit into this program well? What are you looking for?
Well, we were very impressed with the students who applied and who came along for their maturity and their intellectual depth. And I might mention, so were the faculty that we studied with in Northern Ireland. Jeff and I heard repeatedly from the faculty at the institutions where we were there, and also graduate students from around the world that studied with our students, about how energetic and bright and engaged they were. So, you know, we want students who are very serious. Jeff and I bent over backwards, maybe to a fault, telling the students before we left, you know, this is serious business. This isn't a vacation. It is beautiful, it is fun, but we're going to do a lot of hard work there. And so those are the kinds of students who went, and those are the kinds of students who will keep going. Not only to Northern Ireland, but to all of the peace and justice studies, study abroad programs, to Haiti, to the Middle East, to Cuba, to Russia, in Central Asia, and all of the programs we're building are they're first-class programs where we want and get very serious students.
You've got a lot going on, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation on Northern Ireland and the other programs in peace and justice studies.
Hi, my name is Tony. I'm a student with UVU Automotive, and this is my classroom. At UVU, you can graduate with a diploma and a resume.
I'm Patty Garcia, a geology student at UVU, and this is Engaged Learning. At UVU, I'm learning by doing.
Welcome back to Engage. Before we went to break, we were talking about the conflict in Northern Ireland and kind of the fact that conflict is still there. What are you still able to see when you're over there?
There are still remnants of the conflict, places that have been bombed and all, but oftentimes what you really do see are the memorials, the ceremonial plaques and monuments, but also the murals that are kept up frequently, still commemorating, you know, their images of peace building, etc. So the attempts have been there. The attempt to symbolically build a peace bridge between two communities that still do not talk to each other. Those kinds of things are still everywhere you go.
And it's deep-seated, this conflict. So there's argument over even what the name of certain towns are, correct?
We spent quite a bit of time in a city that is either known as Derry or Londonderry, depending on the side of the conflict with which you identify. And Derry was the seat of many active, violent conflicts in the history of the Troubles, including things like Bloody Sunday, which happened during the height of the Troubles. It was a conflict between the British paramilitary troops rolled into this part of Catholic Derry and that had barricaded itself off and began shooting at people who were having a civil rights demonstration. And we actually had the opportunity to be walked through the alleys and streets where that massacre occurred by someone who was there that day in those streets and found himself surrounded by soldiers and friends being shot by those soldiers. And as he walked us through those streets, he took us to the blind corner, what then was a blind alley. It's now been reconfigured, but at the time was a blind alley, and where he saw a friend of his in front of him shot while he stood there with the friend's mother. And the British paramilitary trooper aimed his rifle at our guide and just decided not to pull the trigger and walked away. And so that clearly that things like that are difficult to just set aside once a piece of paper is signed. Although this gentleman who led us through, a gentleman John McCourt, was in fact instrumental then in working on trying to build peace in Derry in particular. But having been a member of the IRA, in fact the Irish Republican Army, which was a paramilitary force there in Northern Ireland, and what was in fact truly the whole experience was clearly moving, having him walk us through it. But then what was truly pointed about that experience was when he pointed to where all the people had died and named them because they were friends of his, and finally said, and the only person that I knew of anyway in this area when the troops came in who was actually a member of the IRA was me, and I lived, and all these other people were killed. So a powerful and certainly and poignant moment.
If I might just add to what Ben said, we spent a lot of time with John McCourt, and he in many ways sort of in his own person demonstrates many of the paradoxes and challenges and interesting aspects of the conflict there, because as Ben said, he was a member of the IRA, but then also became one of the most important instruments of creating the peace. And he's been so important to peace building there that he's now in demand around the world. And he's off to one conflict zone or another, applying his own experiences in Northern Ireland to other conflict zones. He also told us very powerfully, and none of this would have happened if we had just had jobs. You know, so one of the things we studied there is the relationship to poverty, the lack of economic and other kinds of opportunities, and conflict, because those are seedbeds of conflict, and when people have fair opportunities in life, they don't feel the need to engage in violence. So there were many very concrete, practical moments and demonstrations of the conflict there. Jeff mentioned murals, and these murals, that there are thousands of them there, that very powerfully display memories of their history on both sides, and who was right about what, and how long they've been right about what.
They're pretty haunting,
they can be very intimidating and threatening. In fact, while we were there, we came upon people painting a mural, and that was an engaging experience, an impromptu interview we didn't plan on, And that was really something. And yet, I think Jeff intimated that many of these murals are now being repainted to signify the desire for peace.
To be there and to be in those locations and to be with people who were actually there during these events, how did that impact you, Ange?
We had the opportunity to spend some time with the Theater of Witness. What the Theater of Witness does is it takes individuals and they tell their story and they put it into a production, like a play production. And so all of these members help act out each story. And the production we went to was a group of women. So they were talking about their experiences, and oftentimes they were on opposite sides of the conflict. There was an IRA member there and a woman whose husband was killed by one of their chapters. And so it showed how healing is possible through telling stories and the ability to help heal each other, even though you're on opposite sides of the conflict.
And you can read about it, you can study it as much as possible, but you just can't get that experience unless you're engaged like this. How has it changed you personally? Not so much professionally, maybe what you want to do in the future, anything else, but just that experience personally for you two students.
It's remarkable to see people who again, have a hope born of great struggle and difficulty, and to be able to be there and listen to them share that, and to know that horrific circumstances can be overcome, that work can be done, and that it's vital that it be done. And there's an aspect of that I think you could only get from looking in the eyes of someone who has lost a child or a spouse or a parent or in some cases a limb, to the violence. And yet that person, even though they've experienced such a horrific wound, they can look you in the face and say, this piece is important to me, and I'm a vital part of making it happen, no matter where I exist. If I'm a leader in a party or in politics, or if I'm a person in my neighborhood who just talks to the other people in my neighborhood, and that's powerful in a way that I don't know you could in any way capture in a classroom or a book. The classroom and the books are vital. It's vital to have that theoretical understanding, but I don't know how you could model that in any other way than to really be there, and that has changed me, I think, in powerful ways, to know that that's possible, I think.
Ange, how has it changed you?
For me, it's easy for me to get caught up in what I have going on in my everyday life that I feel is so it's a trial, I struggle through it, but then you go to somewhere like Northern Ireland and they've seen so much and they've gone through so much and they're on the other side of it and they're hopeful, So it makes me want to be a better person in the sense that I can, be a good person to other people and not cause the same struggles.
An incredible opportunity. Thank you so much for joining us. We could talk all day about this. It is really fascinating. Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us here on Engage. Join us next time when we highlight more engaged learning opportunities here at Utah Valley University.